Hi everyone, it's me, Krylios, Team Rayceen Productions co-host and moderator.
And I'm Erin Palmer, Team Rayceen Productions co-host and moderator.
Joining us is Adrian. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for being here. Please tell our viewers a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Well, my name is Adrian Gaston Garcia. I go by AGG. I am a local poet and storyteller, actor. I've been in DC for over 12 years now. I'm originally from Chicago. I live here in Columbia Heights. I really love my neighborhood. And yeah, I mean, I've always loved telling stories, and it's been something that has that I feel is a tradition that has been passed on to me by my family members. And the way I kind of do it is through both the spoken word and poetry lens, as well as through comedy and improv.
Amazing, amazing. And storytelling is such a rich heritage and such an important way of how we deliver messages, how we pass on, heritage, how we, really connect with others in a way. And as you said, you've done storytelling in so many different ways, so many different methods in media. Let's dive into some of that and talk to us about some of your past projects.
Yeah, of course. One thing that I collaborated with a local DC dancer and choreographer, Gabriel Mata, who's this phenomenal artist that y'all should follow and check out. We did this show last year called Joteria, or Untold Stories, and it was inspired by Mexican bingo. So if you think of the traditional bingo game, you would replace the letters and numbers with characters or like household items. So there's like the shoe, and there's like, the ladder. So we kind of reimagined what the game would be, but making it with queer and Mexican experiences that we kind of shared. So each, as you can see on the card here, each of these characters had some sort of movement, some sort of dance component, or and some sort of storytelling piece. It could have been a poetry or just a monologue, with the goal of having our stories being seen and heard on stage. So it was this like mosaic and collection of all these different experiences that we felt like we wanted to share. And it was fun. It was great. We premiered it at the Atlas Theater last year as part of their Intersections Festival. We went to the Minnesota Fringe Festival and had a 6-run show there. And it was super well received. I feel like at times to get the intersections of being queer and Latino is something that's really beautiful, because there's just a lot of richness in both experiences. The thing about the show is a lot of it was rooted kind of both in the joy and the trauma of our experiences. So there's a lot of things that we kind of talked about, including masculinity and machismoism, which is really big in the Latina community, Mexican American community. We talked about sexual liberation as well, right? And the importance of being sex positive, body image, immigration, domestic violence. It was there were some pretty heavy topics, but we wanted to make sure that we kind of gave space and air and oxygen for us to kind of explore it through art. Not as a means of like full-on therapy, but in a very therapeutic way, just because people experience things, and it feels good not to feel super alone, and to know that other people have some shared experiences in it.
Of course, that's so amazing. And I wanted to ask, because it was something I noticed when I first saw the images, that, a majority of them were in Spanish, El Amor, El Borracho, all of that. But then you also had like El Wedding Dress and El Citizenship. Could you talk to me about the significance of that?
Yeah, no. So me and Gabriel, we're very much into like Spanglish, right? And I think that is something that I've really learned to to love and embrace, just because it is the mixing of all these rich cultures. And when you feel like you don't have the proper way to say a word or to communicate, you blend what it is that you do know. So Spanglish is very much an act of resourcefulness and defiance, because it is you using what it is that you have. And growing up poor with little resources, you kind of have this instilled in you as trying to be as resourceful as you can, using what it is that you do know and what it is that you do have. So actually, the character number 2, La Lengua, kind of talks about that, right? Just kind of being able to live in two worlds where you feel like sometimes you just can't express yourself in English because there's just some terms and some phrases that are just so much more impactful than Spanish. Or sometimes, like my vocabulary is more extensive in English, right? So like I'm able to speak at a different degree and comfortability in English, and trying to communicate that into Spanish kind of gets tricky, right? So that's where you mix in the Spanglish on both ends. So
I love that. I love that. I really connect with that because as someone that's Jamaican, I also speak Jamaican patois. And sometimes when I'm talking to my partner, like when I'm talking to my friends, I'll just speak full Jamaican patois. And there are some things that doesn't translate over to English. And then I'll say something to my partner and he'll say, what does that mean? And I'm like, how would I say that in English? Like when it doesn't have,
yeah, like an
full
equivalent. Yeah. Or the other thing is too, it's just like it doesn't hit as hard, right? Like, so if I'm angry, or if I really love something and I try to say it in English, it's just like, no, you just don't get it, because there's a word that that really captures it, but
that encapsulates all that comes with that. Certainly.
You had also mentioned dance and improv. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh yeah, no. So part of the show, there was, as I mentioned, there was a storytelling component for each of the characters and a movement component. And I am in no way or shape a dancer at all. Like that, not like, that is definitely Gabriel's strength. But what was really beautiful is that we both challenged each other to kind of step outside of our comfort zone. So not only were we talking about some pretty heavy experiences and issues that we had, but we also wanted to make sure that was portrayed through the art that we're using. So, here is, this came from the character called Las Manos, that was actually about a domestic violent relationship that I was in, and it was abusive, and it was, it lasted a little too long than what it should have. And one way that we wanted to communicate that was through a dance that we did. And it was this very beautiful of like pushing and pulling. And, I'm not a dancer, so my terminology is just not right, when it comes to but it was this very beautiful way to kind of pair this dance to this poem that I had written about that experience, where there was just a lot of, just like force, and I kind of was more of like a ragdoll partner in this piece, and Gabriel kind of took the lead and kind of manipulated my body and moved my body in a way that kind of was fitting for the story that what it was that we were trying to share and to tell. And then, I participated in the Washington Improv Theater curriculum, which is phenomenal. They do a lot of great events and shows throughout the city, and I've made a lot of great friends along the way. And something that they're really intentional about doing are these specific shows with all Latinx casts or an all queer cast. And it's really great because you're able to do improv from a point of shared experiences, right? So sometimes going up on stage with a bunch of random people, if you don't have a necessarily strong foundation of a shared experience, it could go anywhere, right? But the funny thing is, I think, Latino and Latino families and culture, there's just a lot of richness and humor to it that, across all of Latin America, there's some similarities that we carry, right? And a lot of differences. But growing up either abroad or here, there's stuff that we carry that that kind of clicks for us. So it's really great to kind of like experience that on stage and to be able to share those stories in a very funny way. Because improv is all about vibing with, your cast and the other players that you're participating with. And if you have those strong connections or point of references, I'm like, oh yeah, of course I would fit like 7 people in my cousin's car just to go to, the grocery store. And you had a way of sitting and to be able to translate that into stage, it gives, such a strong connection to the audience to be like, I totally know what they're talking about. And as an artist, like my biggest job is to tell a story, but to connect with an audience. And I made it very clear from the go when I started that I really wanted to be intentional about telling the stories of queer and telling the stories that intersect with Latinidad and being very intentional about communicating that, because like I said, I'm just so proud of being Mexican American. I'm just so proud of being gay. That when you kind of merge those two experiences, you create this beautiful art that I want people who watch me or watch the things that I'm in just to kind of do that thing where it's like, I know what he's doing. Like, I get it. Like, I know that reference. And that is, as an artist, like the biggest gift that you can give to the world, really.
That's such an inspiring vision statement. Can you tell us about some of your current projects that might embody that?
Yeah, of course. So so I'm still kind of doing improv, and I've been doing a ton of poetry readings as well, just because that kind of like fuels me. But recently, I had all this like big grandiose plans of like, oh, I'm gonna do all this writing and kind of like this is my year to like get published and to finalize this project and to fully develop this concept. But I was earlier this year, my father was diagnosed with dementia, and it's just been and my family's in Chicago, so I've been having to kind of go back and forth a lot. And it's been hard, right? Like, just being away from family and then having to parachute in and provide support for aging parents. It's something that's really, really challenging, right? But out of that experience, I started writing this collection of poetry, just kind of based off of having to care for aging parents as a gay Latino man living away, right? And there's just a ton of nuances to it, just because I don't have the best relationship with my father. So there's just a lot of like underlying like hostility. And as I mentioned, poetry for me, it's not therapy, but it can be therapeutic to be able to write a lot of the stuff that I'm processing as I go back and forth. So I have a collection about 7 poems right now about it, just to kind of help wrestle through it and figuring out. I've also been working on a few scripts. The next thing that I want to do, I through the Washington Improv Theater, through WIT, I took the script writing class, and it just really fueled my creativity to kind of explore different avenues of storytelling aside from poetry and comedy. And I realized that there's just a lot of great playwrights out there that look and sound like me. It's a field that I want to enter in, and script writers. So I'm currently working on this play that's about this man who wanted to have a quinceañera and didn't. A quinceañera is like this big celebration when you turn 15. It's very gendered, very like there's just a lot of things wrong with it, but because I'm still like living in all these worlds, it's something that I always wanted, right? But we were so poor to have it, and I just was born with boy parts, and there's all this stuff. But just kind of exploring the importance of why this guy wants to have a quinceañera. I'm also working on these short films as well that just really explores sex life within the queer community, especially with the Latino community as well, just because I think there's just a lot of inherent Catholic guilt and shame that still come with it. So it's a project that I'm also very interested in discovering and fleshing out. So
Awesome, awesome. Well, briefly, please tell us about some of your inspirations.
yeah, no, I think when I realized I was a storyteller, it just kind of hits a few different times, just because this is from a show I did with Homo Stanza, that is just an all queer open mic poetry reading slam, poetry slam as well. But what I realize is it's been ingrained in me because of like my family. I come from a family of jokesters, right? They love to tell jokes. I also come from a very gossipy family, so they love to tell stories, even if it's not theirs to tell. They will tell it, and I'm just like, oh, this is why I like telling stories. It's because my mom cannot stop talking about my extended family members who I don't really talk to anymore, right? Like it's because my dad always has a saying for something. We call them dichos, right? But like there's like a lesson learned, like a term of phrase, right? Turn of phrase. So I realized that it's kind of been ingrained in me, but I'm very much a kid from the 90s growing up in Chicago. So a lot of my like media inspirations was definitely like Selena and Shakira, Mariah Carey. I had this beautiful blend of experience of being able to navigate both the English world of Motown and hip hop and R&B, as well as this Mexican identity with when it came to like cumbias and rancheras and Spanish pop. And I just kind of loved consuming media at such a young age and watching all the TV that my parents would allow me to, and all the movies. And at that time, growing up in the 90s, like two figures that really like stood out were both like Rosario Dawson and John Leguizamo, because they were doing what it was that I knew I wanted to do, right? And it was beautiful to see people like me on the screen, telling such great stories. And now I'm just obsessed with just reading everything that I can get my hands on that kind of intersect those both identities of being queer and Latino. And I just want to shout out Dominic Colon, who's this screenwriter who's based in New York, that's just so that talks about his experiences from a place of healing, and or his character's experiences from a place of healing, that I felt was so beautiful. Because I think oftentimes when we make that connection, we're like, oh, I know what they're talking about, or I know that story. It can always at times be limited to just trauma and trauma bonding, right? But there is this healing factor that Dominic has inspired me to kind of fully explore more when it comes to when you're telling stories and making connections. It shouldn't just be about trauma bonding. It should also be about the importance of healing as a community. So
Certainly, certainly.
In our remaining moments, tell us about what you have upcoming.
Cool. Well, on the 28th of April, I'm going to be performing a poetry slam with Homo Stanzas at Crazy Aunt Helen's, which is this phenomenal venue, queer. You should definitely check it out. And then I do have some improv shows coming up in May and June that I'm also excited about. And earlier I talked about Joteria, the show that I did with Gabriel. And we're really excited to share that we're actually going to be going on a college tour with it. We're going to be going to the University of California, doing a stop at Irvine, Riverside, and Berkeley. So I'm really, really stoked about it, because I think the performance and the show itself lends to a lot of great dialogue. And that was something that we were able to explore here in DC when we did a talk back. And I remember when I was in college and just being able to see people who looked and sounded like me come through. It was just a really, really inspiring experience. So I kind of hope to recreate that with that tour. So.
And for our viewers who want to follow you and keep up with what you're up to, how can they do that?
Yeah, definitely follow me on social media. I post a ton of events that I'm in, or other artists that you should support and celebrate, just because it's really important as a community that you support one another. So yeah, so definitely follow me. It's Adrian Gaston Garcia, both on Facebook and on Instagram. So
Thank you. And viewers, links will be in the description. So go ahead and check that out. Adrian, it's been such a pleasure getting to chat with you today and getting to learn about everything that you do. And everyone, make sure that you check out everything and check out Adrian on stage. Adrian, thanks so much for being here. It's been such a pleasure.
thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Take care.
To those watching, please follow Team Rayceen on social media.
And click around our YouTube channel and check out our other interviews, vlogs, forums, and more. And while you're there, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most of all, viewers, thank you for watching.